Have you ever caught yourself imagining a conversation that never happened? Maybe in the shower, walking alone, or lying in bed, and suddenly you're playing out a full scenario in your head. Not because it's real, but because your mind just goes there. And you wonder, why does this happen so often? Why does it feel so real? Here's what psychology shows. This isn't just overthinking, it's a different mental pattern. People who create detailed scenarios in their minds are interacting with reality in a unique way, processing situations beyond what's directly in front of them. And this goes beyond imagination. It's about how your mind prepares, protects, and sometimes escapes. It's how you deal with uncertainty and emotion. And if these mental scenes ever leave you feeling drained or disconnected from the present, there's a reason for that. Let's start here. The social dress rehearsal. You're standing outside a room full of people you barely know. Maybe it's a networking event, a party, or one of those casual gatherings that somehow feel like a job interview in disguise. Before your hand even reaches the door, your mind is already 10 steps ahead. You've played out the opening line, the first question, the polite laugh, even that slightly awkward silence when the conversation dips, and exactly how you'll pull it back with a smooth follow-up or a quick comment that saves the moment. It's almost like you've already been inside, done the whole thing, and came back out to try again. That's the insight. This is social simulation in action. Your brain is running a rehearsal before the real interaction even begins. It's testing scenarios, adjusting responses, and quietly preparing you for what might happen. And here's where things get interesting. The strength of this is bigger than it looks. While most people walk in and just wing it, you arrive with a mental blueprint. You're not searching for words under pressure because you've already explored a few paths. That makes you more composed, more intentional, and a lot less reactive. You tend to navigate conversations with more clarity. You ask smarter questions. You notice subtle cues. And when something slightly uncomfortable happens, and it always does, you don't freeze. You adapt, fast. It's like your brain already installed a backup plan. Another hidden advantage? You come across as someone who just gets it. People feel heard around you. Interactions feel smoother. Even if you were overthinking everything 5 minutes ago, what shows up is someone present, thoughtful, and surprisingly confident. In a world where most conversations are improvised chaos, you bring structure without even trying. But then comes the cost. Because by the time you actually walk into the room, part of your energy is already gone. You've mentally lived the experience once, and now you have to go through it again in real life. It can feel a bit like rewatching a movie you just saw. The novelty is slightly reduced, the excitement isn't as fresh, and if you take it too far, you might start over-directing the moment. Real conversations are unpredictable, a little messy, and not nearly as polished as the version in your head. When reality doesn't match the script, it can feel off, even when everything is going fine. Still, in balance, this isn't a flaw, it's preparation. You're not just showing up and hoping for the best. You're stepping in already ready to handle what comes next. The what if radar. You're about to leave for the airport. Shoes on, phone charged, ride already waiting. And then, out of nowhere, your brain whispers, "What if you forgot your passport?" You freeze for half a second. You were sure it was in your bag, but now you're not so sure anymore. So you check. It's there. You zip the bag, take a breath, and then check again, just to be safe. Because imagine realizing that at the airport, or worse, at the gate, watching your plane exist without you. Annoying? A little. Unnecessary? Not really. That's the insight. This is anticipation of failure. Your brain runs tiny what-if scenarios, not to torture you, but to protect you. It's like a built-in risk detector, constantly scanning for things that could go wrong before they actually do. And honestly, this is where things start to look like a superpower. Because while most people rely on memory and vibes, like, "I think I packed it," your mind double-checks reality.
You catch small mistakes early before they turn into expensive problems, missed flights, or those stories people tell starting with, "You won't believe what happened." You're the person who remembers the charger, the document, the tiny detail everyone else forgets. And it's not just about travel. At work, you spot gaps in plans before they become issues. In daily life, you think one step ahead. You don't just react, you anticipate. That makes you reliable, prepared, and low-key the person everyone depends on when things need to go right. Another advantage? You reduce chaos. Instead of dealing with last-minute panic, you handle things up front. A quick check now saves a full meltdown later. That's a pretty good trade. And let's be honest, there's a certain calm that comes from knowing, yeah, I already thought about that. That's the strength. You avoid mistakes most people only notice when it's already too late to fix them. But then there's the cost. Because if this system runs too hard, it stops being helpful and starts being exhausting. What began as a quick what if turns into a full mental checklist, then another, then another. What if I forgot my wallet? What if I packed the wrong thing? What if something goes wrong at the airport? What if the what ifs have what ifs? At some point, your brain shifts from scanning for possibilities to expecting problems, and that changes everything. Instead of feeling prepared, you start feeling tense. Instead of preventing issues, you're mentally living through them before they even exist. It's like your mind switches from planner to worst-case scenario generator. The irony, the same ability that protects you can also drain you. You spend energy solving problems that might never happen. Still, when balanced, this isn't anxiety, it's awareness. You're not paranoid. You're prepared, just with a brain that likes to double-check the universe before leaving the house.
The mental laboratory. You're facing a problem. It could be a work task that somehow doubled in complexity overnight, or your living room that quietly turned into a storage concept, or even a decision that's been sitting in the back of your mind longer than it should. From the outside, it doesn't look like much is happening. You're still, maybe sitting, maybe pacing a little, maybe staring at the same spot like you're buffering. But internally, it's a full operation. You're shifting pieces around in your head, trying one approach, then another, playing out sequences like a simulation. If I start here, this might break, which means I'll need to fix that, which leads to this outcome instead. It's not visible, but it's active. Here's what's really going on. This is mental prototyping. Your mind is testing ideas in a safe environment where nothing actually breaks, no time is wasted, and no real-world consequences exist. You're experimenting without touching the physical world yet. And this is where things start to work in your favor. Instead of rushing in and figuring things out mid-action, you build clarity first. By the time you move, you're not just trying, you're choosing a direction that has already been pressure tested. You've quietly removed weak options before they ever had a chance to fail in real life. That saves time, a lot of it. While others may go through trial and error externally, you've already done most of that internally. Fewer false starts, fewer unnecessary detours. When you act, it tends to be more direct and efficient. There's also a strategic edge here. You naturally explore multiple angles. Where someone else might see one obvious solution, you're already comparing alternatives. You've considered different paths, different outcomes, and even how things might go wrong and how to adjust if they do. That depth creates better decisions. You're not reacting to the situation, you're understanding it from the inside out. That's why your solutions often feel more solid, more intentional, and less rushed. And when you finally begin, there's a subtle confidence behind it. Not loud confidence, not "I hope this works," more like "I've already walked through this." That changes your pace. You move with more control, less hesitation in the actual execution. Now here's where it can get tricky. None of this internal work is visible to anyone else. From the outside, it may look like delay, like you haven't started, like you're overthinking or avoiding action altogether.
And sometimes that perception can start to affect how you see yourself too. You might wonder if you're taking too long, if you should have jumped in earlier, if thinking this much is actually slowing you down. The real risk is staying in that internal space longer than necessary. Because while this process sharpens your decisions, it doesn't replace action. At some point, the plan has to leave your head and face reality, where things won't be as controlled or predictable. If you keep refining endlessly, progress gets postponed. Still, used the right way, this isn't hesitation, it's preparation happening beneath the surface. You're not stuck. You're building something that's already been tested before it even exists.
The empathy mirror. You notice it almost instantly. Someone reacts in a way that feels slightly off. Maybe they answer a bit too quickly or too coldly. Maybe their smile doesn't quite match their tone. Nothing dramatic, just enough to make you pause. And without even trying, your mind starts filling in the blanks. Did something happen before this? Are they stressed? Was that comment actually about something else? Are they upset or just tired? You're not just seeing the moment, you're looking through it. While most people register the surface, like they seem annoyed, you start building a deeper layer, a possible backstory, a context that explains the reaction beyond what's visible. That's what's happening here. Emotional simulation. Your brain isn't just observing behavior, it's trying to recreate the emotional state behind it. You're modeling what that person might be feeling, thinking, or holding back. And this ability quietly changes how you interact with people. Because instead of reacting only to what's said, you respond to what's meant. You adjust your tone. You choose your words more carefully. You sense when to push a conversation forward and when to give it space. That's a powerful advantage. You pick up on emotional patterns that most people completely miss. Subtle shifts in mood, tension hiding under normal conversations, the difference between someone being quiet and someone being distant. This makes you more aware in social situations. You're less likely to escalate conflict because you can feel when something isn't really about you. You're also more likely to create better connections because people feel understood, even if they can't explain why. And let's be honest, that's rare. A lot of communication is surface level. People say one thing, mean another, and expect others to just get it. You actually do. Another benefit? You're good at reading the room. Whether it's a meeting, a group conversation, or even a casual hangout, you can sense the emotional atmosphere. You know when something feels off, when energy drops, or when someone is uncomfortable but trying to hide it. That awareness gives you an edge. You know when to step in, when to stay quiet, when to lighten the move, or when to simply listen. You don't just participate in conversations, you navigate them. And over time, this builds trust. People feel safe around you, not in an obvious, dramatic way, but in a subtle, I can relax here kind of way. Because you're not just hearing them, you're understanding what's underneath. But like any strong ability, this one has a downside if it runs unchecked. Sometimes your mind goes a bit too far. You take a small signal and expand it into a full story. A short reply turns into "they're upset." A distracted moment becomes "something must be wrong." And before you realize it, you've built a detailed explanation without enough real evidence. The tricky part is that it feels accurate. Because your brain is so good at connecting emotional dots, the story makes sense, it fits, it explains things neatly. Except sometimes it's not true. Not every silence has meaning. Not every mood has a hidden cause. Sometimes people are just tired, distracted, or thinking about what to eat later. When your interpretation goes too deep, it can create unnecessary confusion or even anxiety. You start reacting to things that were never actually there. So the balance becomes important. This ability isn't about guessing everything correctly. It's about staying aware without overfilling the gaps. Used well, it's not overthinking, it's emotional intelligence in motion.
You're not just watching people, you're understanding them, just enough to connect without losing yourself in the story. The pattern builder. It usually starts with something small. A quick gesture, a random comment, a detail most people would ignore without a second thought. But not you. You notice it, and then your mind takes it a step further. That one detail connects to something else, then another. And suddenly, you're not just looking at a moment anymore, you're seeing a whole picture forming, like your brain grabbed a few puzzle pieces and said, "Don't worry, I'll handle the rest." What happened here? This is pattern construction. Your mind has a natural resistance to incomplete information, so it fills the gaps automatically. It builds meaning, connections, and context, even when only part of the story is visible. And honestly, this can be incredibly useful, because while others see isolated moments, you see relationships between them. You connect ideas, behaviors, and signals that don't seem related at first glance. That gives you a deeper understanding of what's going on around you. You're the kind of person who can walk into a situation and quickly get a sense of how things fit together. At work, this might mean spotting trends before anyone else does. You notice repeated issues, hidden patterns, or subtle shifts that others overlook. While someone else sees random problems, you see a system behind them. That's a big advantage. It helps you make smarter decisions because you're not relying on one moment. You're considering the bigger picture. You don't just react to what's happening now, you connect it to what happened before and what might happen next. There's also a creative side to this. Your ability to link ideas makes you naturally better at problem solving. You can take something from one context and apply it somewhere completely different. That's where new ideas come from, unexpected connections. So while others stay inside obvious solutions, you explore possibilities that aren't immediately visible. And let's not ignore the social side. You can pick up on patterns in people's behavior too, reactions, habits, tone shifts. Over time, you start to understand how someone operates. That makes interactions smoother because you're not guessing every time. You've already mapped some of it out. All of this comes from one simple thing. Your brain doesn't settle for fragments. It wants a full picture. But here's where things can get tricky. Sometimes your mind completes the puzzle with pieces that don't actually belong. Because once your brain starts building a pattern, it naturally wants it to make sense. It connects dots quickly and sometimes too confidently. A few small signals turn into a strong conclusion. A couple of coincidences start to feel like proof, and before you know it, the story feels solid, even if it's not entirely accurate. The challenge is that it feels right. Your brain is doing what it's good at, creating meaning. But not every connection reflects reality. Sometimes things are random. Sometimes details don't lead anywhere. When that line gets blurred, you might start trusting patterns that aren't really there. That can lead to misinterpretations, overthinking, or unnecessary assumptions. So the key isn't to stop building patterns, it's to stay flexible with them. Let them guide you, not define everything. Because when balanced, this isn't overanalyzing, it's awareness working at a higher level. You're not just noticing what happens, you're seeing how things connect, even when others don't. The internal simulator. You're trying to make a decision. It could be something simple, like choosing between two plans for the weekend, or something bigger, changing jobs, moving to a new place, saying yes to an opportunity that feels exciting and slightly terrifying. Most people compare options on paper, pros and cons, what makes sense, what looks better. You do something different. You imagine yourself inside each option. You picture the routine, what your mornings would look like, the people around you, the energy of the environment, even small details like how you'd feel on a random Tuesday, not just on the exciting first day. It's like you're test driving different versions of your life without leaving your chair. That's what's happening here. Experiential forecasting. You're not just making a logical decision, you're simulating what it would actually feel like to live it. And this gives you a very real advantage, because decisions aren't just about what works on paper, they're about what works for you over time. While someone else might choose the best option and regret it later, you're already checking for alignment. You're asking, can I live this? Not just, does this make sense? That changes the outcome. Your choices tend to fit your lifestyle better. They match your energy, your preferences, your pace. You're less likely to end up in situations that look good externally, but feel wrong internally. Another benefit? Fewer surprises. Since you've mentally stepped into the experience, you're not walking in blind. You've already considered how things might feel, not just at the beginning, but after the novelty wears off. That helps you avoid decisions based purely on excitement or pressure. You also develop a stronger sense of self over time, because every simulation forces you to ask, what actually works for me? You become more aware of what drains you, what motivates you, and what kind of environment helps you function at your best. That's not something everyone takes the time to figure out. So when you commit to something, it's usually with more clarity and less doubt. Not because you overthink, but because you've already explored the experience from the inside. But of course, there's a point where this can work against you. If you simulate too many options, everything starts to blur. Each path has pros, each path has downsides, and since you've imagined all of them, none of them feel completely certain anymore. You can get stuck comparing experiences that don't even exist yet. What started as clarity turns into hesitation. Option A feels good, but option B also works. Option C has potential, but what if I'm missing something? At some point, your brain stops helping you choose and starts keeping you in the loop. The key is knowing when to stop simulating and start deciding, because this ability isn't meant to create perfect certainty. It's meant to give you better perspective. Used well, it's not indecision, it's depth. You're not just picking an option, you're choosing a life that already makes sense before you even step into it.
The emotional buffer. Out of nowhere, your mind takes a turn. You're going about your day, and suddenly, boom, you're imagining something going wrong. Not in a dramatic movie-style way, more like quiet, realistic scenarios. A conversation that doesn't go well. A plan that falls apart. Someone saying no. Something not working out the way you hoped. And instead of stopping there, you keep going. Okay, if that happens, what would I do next? How would I respond? How would I handle it? You don't just imagine the problem, you mentally rehearse the recovery. What's happening here is emotional pre-processing. Your mind is trying to get ahead of uncertainty by softening the emotional impact before anything even happens. It's like putting mental shock absorbers in place. And surprisingly, this has real benefits. Because when something actually does go wrong, and let's be honest, sometimes it will, you're not completely thrown off. You've already visited that scenario, at least in part. It's not brand new territory. That familiarity makes a difference. While others might freeze, panic, or take longer to process what just happened, you tend to stabilize faster. Your brain has already explored possible reactions, so you move into problem-solving mode more quickly. You don't stay stuck in the "why did this happen" phase for too long. Instead, you shift toward "what now?" That's a huge advantage. It makes you more resilient, more adaptable. You bounce back with less emotional whiplash because, in a way, you've already practiced the fall. There's also a quiet confidence hidden in this. Not the kind that says nothing will go wrong, but the kind that says, even if it does, I'll figure it out. That mindset changes how you face challenges. You're less afraid of uncertainty because you've already explored parts of it.
You don't need everything to be perfect, you just need to know you can handle it if it's not. Another upside, you tend to think ahead in a very practical way. You don't just hope things go well, you prepare for different outcomes. That makes you more flexible when plans shift, because you've already considered alternatives. But there's a trade-off. All of this mental preparation comes at a cost, because even if those scenarios never happen, your brain still goes through them. Emotionally, it's like experiencing small versions of those situations in advance, and that uses energy. You might feel drained without anything actually going wrong. You've been preparing for impact even when there was no collision. If this runs too often, your mind can start spending more time in what could go wrong than in what's actually happening. That's when it becomes heavy. The goal isn't to eliminate this process, it's to keep it in balance. Let it prepare you, not exhaust you. Because at its best, this isn't pessimism, it's emotional readiness. You're not expecting the worst, you're making sure that if it happens, it won't break you.
The internal mirror. It's over. The conversation ended. The moment passed. Everyone moved on. But your brain didn't. Later, maybe in the shower, maybe while brushing your teeth, maybe right when you're about to sleep, you hit replay. You go back to that exact moment, the tone you used, the pause that felt slightly too long, that sentence you almost said differently. Only this time, you're not just reliving it, you're studying it. Why did I react like that? Did that sound weird? Could I have handled that better? It's like watching a recording of yourself, except the recording is in your head, and you have full control over pause, rewind, and slow motion. What's happening here is self-observation. Your mind is reviewing past behavior, not to suffer through it, but to understand it. You're looking for patterns in how you think, speak, and react. And this is where things become valuable, because most people go through situations and never really examine them. They repeat the same habits, the same reactions, the same communication style without ever questioning it. You don't. You notice details about yourself that others completely miss, small tendencies, subtle reactions, the way your tone shifts depending on the situation, the moments where you hold back or push too much. That awareness gives you something powerful, the ability to adjust. You're not locked into automatic behavior. Over time, this means you grow faster. You refine how you communicate. You become more intentional with your words. You learn what works, what doesn't, and what feels more aligned with who you want to be. It's like having a built-in feedback system. Instead of waiting for someone else to point things out, you catch them yourself. That makes your progress more consistent and more independent. There's also a confidence that comes from this, not because you think you're perfect, but because you know you're paying attention. You trust that you'll learn from situations instead of just repeating them, and that creates improvement that compounds over time. Small adjustments, better reactions, clearer communication, all because you took a moment to look inward. But there's a line, because if that replay button gets stuck, things start to shift. What began as observation can slowly turn into criticism. Instead of, what can I learn from this? It becomes, why did I do that? Instead of curiosity, it becomes judgment. You start focusing more on what went wrong than on what can improve. And since your brain is good at analyzing, it can keep going, loop after loop, same moment, same thoughts, slightly different angles, but no real resolution. That's when it becomes exhausting. You're no longer learning, you're just reliving. The key is knowing when to stop the replay, take the insight, make the adjustment, and move on. Because this ability isn't about being hard on yourself. It's about becoming more aware of how you operate. Used well, it's not overthinking, it's self-awareness in motion. You're not just experiencing life, you're learning from it, one moment at a time.
The pressure simulator. Something important is coming up. A presentation, a tough conversation, maybe a moment where you know people will be watching, listening, judging just a little. And before it even happens, your mind gets to work. You run through it once, then again, then one more time, just to make sure. In one version, everything goes smoothly. In another, someone asks a difficult question. In a third, something feels slightly off, and you adjust your response on the fly. It's like you're rehearsing multiple versions of the same scene, testing different outcomes before stepping into the real one. This is performance rehearsal. Your brain is reducing uncertainty by building familiarity. The more you mentally experience something, the less new it feels when it actually happens. And that changes how you show up. Because when the real moment arrives, it's not completely unfamiliar territory. You've already explored parts of it. You've heard the questions. You've felt the pressure, at least in a controlled, internal way. That gives you an edge. While others might freeze or stumble when things don't go exactly as expected, you tend to stay more grounded. Your brain recognizes the situation, even if it's not identical, and says, "We've been here before. We're fine." That translates into composure. You speak more clearly. You react more calmly. You don't rush as much because you're not trying to figure everything out in real time. A lot of that work has already been done. Another advantage is adaptability. Since you've imagined different scenarios, you're less dependent on things going perfectly. If something unexpected happens, you're quicker to adjust. You've already considered variations, so you don't panic when reality doesn't follow the ideal script. That flexibility makes you more resilient under pressure. There's also a confidence boost that comes from this process. Not the loud, over-the-top kind, but a steady sense of readiness. You don't need to rely on luck or hope everything works out. You trust your preparation, and that trust shows. People often interpret it as confidence, even if internally you were rehearsing 5 different outcomes the night before. But there's a point where this can go too far. If you replay the moment too many times, it can start to feel over-structured. Instead of being present, you're comparing reality to your internal versions. You notice when things don't match the script. You might hesitate, trying to get it right, instead of just responding naturally. It can make the interaction feel slightly stiff, almost like you're performing instead of engaging. And if the real situation goes in a completely different direction, which it often does, it can throw you off more than expected, because your mind was holding on to a specific version. The goal isn't to control every detail. It's about feeling ready without becoming rigid, because this ability, when balanced, isn't about perfection. It's about familiarity. You're not just walking into pressure and hoping for the best. You're stepping in with a sense that you already know how to handle it.
The feedback loop. Something didn't go the way you wanted. Maybe it was a conversation that felt slightly off, a moment where your timing wasn't great, or a situation where later on you thought, yeah, I could have handled that better. Most people just feel the regret and move on. You do something else. You revisit it, but not just to relive it. You start tweaking it. Same situation, different words. Same moment, better timing. Same setup, improved response. It's like you're editing a scene after it already happened, testing how it could have played out with small adjustments. What's going on here is behavioral adjustment. Your brain is using past experiences as raw material to refine how you'll act next time. It's not stuck in the past, it's learning from it in real time. And this gives you a serious advantage, because every mistake becomes data. Instead of repeating the same patterns over and over, you start upgrading them. You notice what didn't work, and more importantly, you explore what would work better. That means your growth is faster. While some people need multiple real-life repetitions to improve, you accelerate the process internally. You've already tested variations in your head, so when a similar situation shows up again, you're not starting from zero. You're coming in with a refined version. That shows up in small but powerful ways. You communicate more clearly. You adjust your tone faster. You become better at reading timing, when to speak, when to pause, when to shift direction.
Over time, this creates a noticeable difference. You don't stay stuck in outdated behaviors, you evolve. Another benefit? You become more intentional. Instead of acting on autopilot, you start choosing your responses. You recognize patterns in yourself and actively reshape them. That gives you a sense of control, not over everything, but over how you show up. And that builds confidence. Not because you think you'll get everything right, but because you trust your ability to improve. You know that even if something goes wrong, you won't waste it. You'll learn from it, adjust, and come back better. But there's a balance to maintain. If you spend too much time replaying and refining past moments, you can get stuck there. The loop keeps running. What should have I said? What would have been better? What if I had done this instead? At some point, it stops being useful and starts pulling your attention away from what's happening now. You're improving yesterday while missing today. That's when it becomes a problem. The goal isn't to perfect the past, it's to prepare for the future. Take the lesson, make the adjustment, and then move forward. Because this ability, used well, isn't about regret, it's about evolution. You're not just reacting to life as it happens, you're continuously upgrading how you handle it. If you're not subscribed, you'll probably never see us again. But if you are, congratulations, you're growing every day.